Hi everyone, Chris here from my porch in Canfield, back with some more porch thoughts for today. This time it's centered around an article I read the other day from the Washington Post, which I will post in the comments here. But this article detailed how, since the transition to distance learning this year from the coronavirus, obviously, students are going to be academically behind. And there are some really interesting comments from various people in this article that had me thinking about the educational ramifications. You know, there was a quote from someone from the Fordham Institute that said, well, basically everyone from low-income districts need to just repeat the grade next year. And if this doesn't demonstrate the outrageous and despicable gulf we have between the wealthiest districts and the poorest districts in our society, I don't know what does. We are saying essentially, we know that people in poorer districts aren't going to have the resources needed. We might as well just have them do it all over again. Instead of implementing measures to ameliorate the situation and making sure that people aren't defined by their socioeconomic status, we'll just have them repeat and we'll act like it doesn't happen. Ridiculous. It's the loudest truck I've ever heard. Another quote from that article deals with someone from Michigan who's in a rural district. And one of the proposals was, maybe we will start school in the summer, late July, early August, to do some catch up. And she was saying, well, that's all well and good, but the newest building we have in our whole district is 55 years old and it doesn't have air conditioning. So we're going to cram all these kids into upper floors of the school in 90-degree day heat. That's not going to be a conducive, an environment conducive to learning. And finally, there was one I wanted to talk about from a district in Cleveland, actually. And this school superintendent was saying basically that, hey, listen, we are going to start early, but not only that, we are going to stick to just core curriculum as a proposal. Get rid of everything else. First of all, for the love of God, do not cut art programs, do not cut music programs. Those are every bit of important in a student's academic development as every other subject. And this is where I want to go with this conversation, these thoughts today. The only reason this person is saying that is because of this culture of standardized testing that we have. It started with No Child Left Behind, of course, and it was sort of amplified with Common Core. So this is a bipartisan effort here on this testing culture. But as educators, we are, first of all, let's go to the beginning. When we are learning to be teachers, we are taught that every child, learns differently. We all have our different learning styles. For example, I learn by, I'm an auditory learner and then a kinesthetic learner. Other students might be, visual learners, so on and so forth. So every child learns differently, and we are to use a variety of teaching styles and methods to make sure that we reach all of them, which is good. We know that is sound educational theory. The flaw in this theory comes about by, we all know they learn differently, but you know what? We're not going to allow them to demonstrate that learning any differently. They all have to take one standardized written test. Those two philosophies don't mesh. Not only that, but they take the tests in late March, early April, so teachers have to cram a year's worth of learning material into that time frame. And then after the test, it's a lot more freedom, and that's when real learning takes place. But learning standards on these tests are not the same across states. You could take one state and take their criteria for what is academically, achieving successful student, compare it with another state. One student would be considered failing, one student would be considered passing in another state. In Ohio, we have taken away measures such as value added. Why did we do that? Well, I think it's for the state report card and is a concerted effort by those in power to benefit the for-profit charter schools. Because if you take away value added, here's what value added is in a nutshell. If a student comes to me in 8th grade with a 4th grade reading level, and by the end of the year, I have raised that student to a 7th grade reading level, I think we can all agree that learning has taken place. This kid has jumped 3 grading levels of reading. Value added says that that takes that into account. Yes, this student isn't at an 8th grade reading level, but he has increased these steps, and so that student gets credit for the obvious learning that took place. Well, here in Ohio, we saw that that was benefiting mostly low-income districts, and so they got rid of it. And what that does now is everyone is compared. So if a student comes to me now with a 4th grade reading level, I raise that kid to a 7th grade reading level. It doesn't matter. He's not at an 8th grade reading level. It doesn't matter where he came from before. It doesn't matter any sort of circumstances like, student mobility from district to district, poverty. It takes none of that into account. And therefore, that reflects poorly on the state report card. The state report card, of course, can be used to justify increased vouchers to these private and charter schools, which takes money from a public districts, which just exacerbates the problem. It's a completely ridiculous educational situation we've gotten ourselves in with these standardized testing. Not only that, but Ohio is only one of, I believe it's 13 states that has high stakes testing as it is, meaning you have to use high school students have to pass the test in order to graduate. They are used for the state report card to determine funding, punishment, so on and so forth. And we know for a fact that standardized testing is not an accurate measure of student success. I want you to think about someone right now who is brilliant, a genius. I've known several of them from my times in high school. I have had friends that were exceptionally smart and brilliant in their own ways. However, when it came to academics, they didn't apply themselves and they were not successful. They scored off the charts on every standardized test, but they didn't go to college, they dropped out, they struggled in high school. And here's why. We know for a fact that tests are not the measure of success. What determines academic success is grit. It's that stick-to-itiveness. You measure that over a course of a student's lifetime. You measure it week to week, quarter to quarter, year to year. So instead of having these standardized tests, which we know are not an accurate reflection of true student learning, it forces teachers to teach to the test. Why don't we have authentic assessments, which demonstrate student grit? It shows their wider portfolio of learning, and it will be a better barometer of potential student success moving forward post-high school and in college. So those are just some quick thoughts on standardized testing. I feel I might have been rambling here and there a bit, but there's just so much to say about this, and I just wanted to give you some quick thoughts here in a few short minutes. But I will continue talking about this because if I'm elected, one of the things I will be pushing for as part of my education policy is a real hard look at these standardized tests. Why do we continue to be one of a handful of states that has high stakes testing? What's the purpose? What's behind it? We need to adjust the way we are thinking about education moving forward in Ohio. I welcome your comments. I welcome your thoughts on this issue as well. Please feel free to reach out in the comments and social media. Shoot me a message from the website, and I'll be back with more thoughts on this and other items later. Hope you're staying safe, everyone. Take care.